Hey, hey there, everybody. You have found another episode. This is another episode of the Webinar Talk Show. My name is Tom Singer.
And I'm Liz Green, and we are kicking off our count 'em, fourth season, which doesn't seem quite possible, Tom. We are in the, I believe, 90s of episodes, getting close to our 100th episode and our first anniversary. So this is all very exciting.
I can't believe it was April 2020 when we came up with the idea to start interviewing really smart people on the Webinar Talk Show and to be able to share their brilliance for people in every industry and our meeting professional partners, because
Absolutely.
we have had so many people who have shared so many great ideas, and we've taken every single quarter and made it into a season. And so here we go. It is now season 4, all about innovation.
Right.
And Eliz, I couldn't think of anybody better to start the discussion about innovation with than Steven Shapiro.
Right. And he actually agreed to come and talk with us, which is very cool.
Yes. And Steven is actually a wannabe magician. Like, in fact, one time when I was in Florida, I went to have a drink with him and he took me to a magic show. The guy loves magic. But what he does in his business is he uses a lot of the techniques he's learned through magic, and he helps companies make the impossible possible. You see, he's a problem solver, and he can help just about anybody find better solutions to solve their business problems. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Steven, welcome to the Webinar Talk Show.
Woo!
Yes. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you might be. Good to be here.
This is exciting. So thanks for coming and helping us kick off our theme of innovation. And tell me a little bit, I love the making the impossible possible. Why does that work when talking about innovation?
Well, there's a quote that I love from Walt Disney, who said, it's kind of fun to do the impossible. And so a lot of times we look at innovation and problem solving and the current situation that we're in as being a bad thing. And obviously there's a lot of negative things associated with the current environment, but it's difficulty when I think some great opportunities arise. And so when we take the time to actually sort of revel in problem solving, actually find the pleasure in making the impossible possible, or as Walt Disney said, it's kind of fun to do the impossible. I think it's a really wonderful thing, and it can energize people when we tap into that part of their brain.
So I love that quote. I've never heard that before. I wrote that down because it really does resonate. But for a lot of companies and a lot of individuals, this year has been somewhat traumatic, and people are maybe a little bit paralyzed. The impossible just seems impossible. So how do you even start a conversation with people to show them that it can be fun? We can get through this.
Yeah, I mean, and look, fun is I guess in the eye of the innovator, but at the end of the day, I think what it really comes down to is recognizing that we need to give people the tools to be able to make the impossible possible. And I think the reason why so many people struggle isn't because they don't have the ability to do it, they don't have the clarity around how to do it. And so really my main work that I do with companies is give them clarity around what's important, what matters, what problems should they focus on, and then give them a process for being able to solve it. And when you actually have the tools and you start seeing progress, it starts to become fun, because now all of a sudden it's like now you feel like you're actually making things happen. But you have to have that clarity, which is what most people struggle with, I think.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think particularly in the last, what are we talking now, 15 months, it was hard to find some clarity. There was so much to be, a lot of uncertainty. Certainly people were overwhelmed. When you get into work with a group and there is so much going on, how do you get them to sit down and actually focus and sort of push all of that noise aside?
I mean, the first step is just to stop and breathe. The biggest mistake that I think most organizations have made long before the pandemic is that they're looking for answers. And the problem is having all the answers isn't the answer. It's about the questions we ask. And so what you need to do is push the pause button and just say, what questions do we need to ask? Because here's the reality is, if you're solving the wrong problem, no matter how much energy, no matter how much time, no matter how much money you put into it, if it's the wrong problem, you're never going to get the right answer. And if you're moving quickly, you're going to move in the wrong direction quickly. So by course correcting, by stopping and making sure, okay, we need to move this direction, or we need to move this direction, just that pause is going to help you make sure you're course correcting and aligning your resources most effectively. And we tend not to do that because we're in such frantic pace that we never take the time to stop.
So you talk a little bit about innovating innovation, and I love that. But why don't you tell everybody what that means? How do we innovate innovation?
Well, I think the definition of innovation for most people is creativity or ideas. And one of the things that I strongly believe is that asking for ideas is a bad idea. Pretty much every company I go into, they'll have suggestion boxes, they'll do hackathons, they'll do idea management systems, and they'll get thousands and thousands and thousands of ideas, of which maybe one or two are valuable. And so what ends up happening is, it doesn't mean that there's not value in those one or two, but if you think about the 99+% of the time that we spent thinking about problems, submitting problems, analyzing and evaluating problems that don't have value, it's not efficient. And so to innovate the way you innovate, you really need to recognize it doesn't start with the solution, the answer, or the idea. It actually starts with the question, the problem, or the opportunity. And if we take the time to just spend a little bit of energy in reframing the problem, making sure it's important, and then reframing it, now every dollar that we spend in solving this problem is going to have an exponential return, as opposed to, in most cases, we get an incremental return at best.
So Stephen, how do we reframe the problem? I mean, that's great when you say that, but my first thought was just thinking about my own business. I'm like, oh, I've got a couple problems. Maybe I should reframe them. Where do I start?
I mean, the first thing is to question your assumptions. So what do you assume about your business? And you just sort of, write everything down. What do you believe to be true? What do you know to be true? What is never true? And you start just really starting to list these assumptions and start to challenge them. That's really the first step. And then I have a series of tools that I use with my clients that are specifically designed to help you take whatever problem you think you're solving and put it into what Mark Twain would call a mental kaleidoscope. And it basically allows you to take the problem you thought you were solving. For example, how can I improve my speaking business might be a problem, but maybe that's the wrong problem. Maybe I'm not in the speaking business. Maybe I'm in the problem-solving business. Maybe I'm in the innovation business. And by even just that slight shift away from, okay, I'm not improving my speaking business, I'm improving a problem-solving business, opens up new opportunities. If I'm writing a book, maybe I'm not writing a book, maybe I'm creating a product. Product and book are similar, but they're not the same. Why am I even writing a book? So all these types of simple questions can really fundamentally change the way you think about the solutions.
So I've been following some of your work this year, and you've sort of done that. You don't really identify yourself as a speaker, although that's part of what you offer to clients. So how have you retooled your own business and how you position yourself to clients?
So this has been an evolution. It's been happening for several years now. What's interesting is each year I choose a theme. And at the end of 2019, my theme for 2020 was going to be virtual and local. I didn't realize how true that theme was going to be.
That was a really good choice, as it turned out.
That was a really good choice.
My crystal ball. But I moved to Orlando, and there's a second largest convention area in the country. So I wanted to do more here, and I also wanted to be on planes. So I decided virtual and local would be a theme. And then for 2021, the theme is ongoing relationships. And really, to me, the key is, and the challenge is, if you think of yourself as a speaker, you're thinking of each client as a transaction. So I need 50, 60, 70 speeches a year. But what if you flip that and say, how can I get 5 great relationships a year? How can I actually help an organization transform what they do? And so everything that I've been focused on for the past several years has been leading up to what I'm doing now, which is the speech is not the end. Doesn't mean I don't do speeches, but the speech, as often as possible, will be the start of something much larger. It's the kickoff of a transformation, a kickoff of a process, a kickoff of something that's going to make a huge impact in the organization. To me, the measure of success is business results. It's not check marks saying people like me or standing ovations. Those are nice, but they don't really move the needle for an organization.
So let's turn this around for people who are planning meetings, associations and companies. I know that one of their problems is, are they ready to go back to in person? Are they going to do hybrid? Will people show up? Have enough people been vaccinated? So what are you advising any clients that you have as to how to view that problem of the reopening, if you will, of the meetings business?
And so I've already done some in-person events, did one a couple weeks ago. I have one on Friday, which will be 500 people in a space, I think that's designed for 3,000 people. So it is different. It is different. And obviously, here's the really cool thing that happens. I did an event in Ireland virtually. So I didn't have to get on a plane, didn't have to take 4 days out of my calendar. And originally they were supposed to have this event held in a ballroom for 600 people. They had 3,000 people who were able to attend. So moving forward, their strategy is 600 people in person and as many thousands of people as they can virtually through the live stream. And so the key for the speaker and for the event planner, for the meeting professional, is to make sure that we treat the in-person people equally to the people who are virtually, the people who are live streaming. Because if we only cater to one of them, well, now we're losing some energy. If you cater just to the 3,000 who are going virtually, the people who are in the room aren't going to have the energy, and that lack of energy is going to carry on to the virtual experience. So it's really going to be on the speaker and the meeting professional to make sure that we have the tools to be able to engage people both physically and virtually at the same time. I think that's what's going to be, and I don't think this is just a short-term thing. I think this is a long-term thing. And I've got a couple of thoughts around this that I can share if you're interested.
Absolutely, we're interested. I mean, this is something that Tom and I have been talking for, I don't know what, almost 8 years now, right, Tom? That the future is really this hybrid model. That why would you turn away 6,000 people who could be participating in your conference? But you're right. You have to serve both of those audiences well. Tom and I are big believers that's because you need more than one MC. You need people who are paying attention to those. But yes, do share your thoughts on this.
So there's a concept that I've been talking about for quite a few years right now, and I think it might become a cornerstone of a lot of work that we do, and it's called phygital. Phygital, it sounds like a weird, like I'm a little fidgety, but it's actually PHY. Phygital, which is the blending of the physical world and the digital world.
Ooh.
And what's traditionally happened in the past is we thought of one versus the other. I'm doing a digital presentation, or I'm doing an in-person physical presentation. But to me, the huge opportunity isn't just people watching virtually and people watching in person, but the in-person people having a virtual or digital experience at the same time. And it's more than just voting and things like that, which is maybe the closest we've gotten to it, but there's a lot more we can do. And I've built a number of tools specifically around creating a phygital environment for in-person events. Takes a little more work. I mean, to be clear, it's not just like you do the same exact setup. You need a little more preparation for it, but it has a huge impact. And that's what I've loved about the virtual events is we're not only am I talking to you right now, but when I'm doing a speech, I'm actually giving people access to a password protected website built specifically for that client. In the middle of the speech, they go there, they download some materials, and we use those materials live during the speech. So they are able to engage with the digital tools in a digital environment. Well, imagine doing the same type of thing in a physical environment.
That makes all kinds of sense. And I think one of the things that, going back to having an in-person component, is that I like this digital virtual environment. There are things that we can do here that are more difficult to do in person. And I like this idea of how can we use digital materials, like everybody has their phone or their computer right there. How can we actually be doing this all together? I love that idea.
Well, let me give you, I think that what I love about the virtual or digital environment that we're in right now is engagement. And I know the engagement is different, but imagine you're in a room with 500 people. And I do a lot of questions to the audience. Either they're experiments I do to see how their brain thinks. Now, normally I can only have a few people shout out an answer to a question. But in the digital world with chat, every single person has equal access all the time to give their voice. And what I also really love about it, being an introvert myself, is the introverts feel like they have a voice.
Right.
They can speak as loudly as the extroverts. And it's a great thing. So it's that, though, we have to start taking full advantage of everything that's been developed over the past year for the digital environment and bring that to the physical environment so we can have a higher level of engagement.
So, Stephen, one of the things I'm trying to do with my business, I know Eliz is trying to do with her business, and I know you've been very good at over the last year with your clients, and that is to be able to go deeper with your clients than just the speech. And you kind of alluded to it before, but being able to offer them more than just being a speaker and getting those applause. So what are some of the things you're doing, and why is that a good idea for clients to want their speakers to be more than just an hour on stage and at the airport?
So for me, a lot of it has to do with just wanting to create more value. My business, I've been in the speaking business for 20 years right now. And, as a speaker, I know I make an impact, but I've decided I want to make a deeper impact. And so, for example, I've launched something which is called the Invisible Solutions Institute. So Invisible Solutions is my latest book. So I created the Invisible Solutions Institute. And it's really a place where I can certify people in my process for innovation and problem solving. What's really cool is some of the technologies that we have available to us allow us to engage people in different ways. So I love asynchronous digital tools. That's really a big part of the way I work with my clients now. So we can use tools such as Voxer or Yak to be able to send people messages, and then I can respond back to them at my convenience. It means it takes less time off my calendar, but they have 24/7 access to me. So there's so much more we can do today than we could, let's say, a year or two ago. And I think it's almost like our responsibility, if people are paying us to get on a stage to deliver a speech, to make sure that we follow through on the promise of what results they're going to get. And it doesn't have to be something that costs the client more money. For example, like I said, every engagement I do, I create a custom developed, password protected website branded with their materials. I include videos specifically for them, the slides for my event, everything is there. They don't even have to give me an email address. So this is not about getting them on a list. It's password protected for that event so that they can now have an environment where we can keep on adding material specifically for them. And to me, that's something which I think we have a responsibility to do as a speaker, is to drive as much value, especially now where companies are struggling and individuals are struggling. The more we can help them out, I think it's just our responsibility.
I wrote down following through on the promise of the speech. That's pretty golden right there. But I wonder if there is sort of a line to follow about the promise of the conference in the same way, because I'm deep in the process. I'm on the NSA influence committee, and so working on it hard. And that idea just sort of struck me. It's like, how are we following through on that promise of the speeches, of the conference? So it's just not, we all leave and go home, and that was great. What do you talk to about your clients when they're planning a conference to follow through on that promise?
Right. So, there's the follow through of the promise for the conference, which I will certainly have a conversation with them and help influence that any way I can. But in terms of the promise of the speech, well, I definitely can, work there. And usually what I will do is we call it the event industry. So we talk about events, but the problem is events start, they stop, you get on the stage, leave the stage, you wave to everybody, and you're gone. But what if the event isn't the end, it's the start? What if we kick off a process? And so, for example, my whole work is around problem solving and innovation. So in almost every single event that I do, when I leave the stage, they are given a challenge that they can take on for however long it is. And each event's different. Some days it's a 30-day challenge. There's a standard 5-week challenge that I have where somebody spends 5 minutes, 5 days a week for 5 weeks, and they will take a problem that they can't solve and use one of my 25 lenses each day to solve that problem. And by the end of the 5 weeks, they've mastered the process, they've used the tools, and more importantly, they've actually solved the process and can solve the problem and can use that again. So it's anything that we can do to keep it alive. There's gamification that I use with my clients to keep things alive. There's so much that we can do, but the key is we have to do something. And the more it's engaging and powerful and impactful and fun, the more people will do it.
That is very, just that little moment is very juicy in terms of really pointing at, I mean, going back to what you were talking about, opportunity and problems. I mean, what problem are you really solving? Is it that I need to get people in that ballroom, or I need to get those people to sign in? Or is it really I need to demonstrate how valuable this organization is and give them something in return that fulfills that promise? That's a much bigger challenge, but it's exciting.
I think it's exciting. It's fun. I mean, it's like Walt Disney said, it's kind of fun to do the impossible. And
right.
Sometimes these things do feel a little impossible, but that's what makes it really juicy. And I'll say, look, each event has different objectives. So if I'm working for a corporation for their employees, that's a different objective than if I'm working for an association for its members, or if I'm doing an event for a company where it's their customers and their clients. Each of these are going to have different objectives. Sometimes it's we want to make the company look good because our best clients are in the audience. Or sometimes it's we want to be able to add value to each of the member companies. Or we want to be able to help our employees improve the bottom and top line of the company. So it's tailored to each type of need depending on the type of event.
So Stephen, I love it when we end this show with some sort of like a takeaway nugget of information for someone who's watching. And so when people are really looking at how do I innovate? How do I make the impossible possible? Do you have a couple of things that maybe you only give to clients that you'll give away for free right here to the listeners of this show? What are a couple of tips that we can end this show with?
I would say the first one, and it's something I talked about before, is recognize that sometimes to go fast, you have to go slowly. You have to actually stop. You have to course correct. And so the number one tip that I give everyone, so this isn't like, trade secrets or anything, but you have to make sure you're solving the right problem. And I think that is just so incredibly important. And we've seen this, though, in other areas. And I will say that, for example, when I look at sales, we've done studies where we found that if we measure people on how much they sell versus how well they serve the customers, we found that on average, the people who are focused on serving the customers sell more than those who are focused on selling. And there's that same paradox. I call that the performance paradox. And the same thing is true for the work we're talking about here, which I call it the solution paradox, which is basically sometimes the more we focus on the answer, the less likely we are to find an answer. The more we focus on the solution, the less likely we are to find a good solution. But if we stop, breathe, and ask ourselves, what's the real underlying problem? And before you even do that, ask yourself, is this even an important problem? Should I even be wasting my time on this? Or is there something else I could focus on? And so there's just this whole process of inquiry around the problem that I think becomes so fundamentally important.
The inquiry around the problem is probably the thing that we are so accustomed to avoid. It's like, no, let me just slap a solution on that. But I think that is brilliant advice.
Well, thanks. I mean, and we're, just to be clear, as human beings, we aren't wired to innovate. We're actually wired for survival, and we innovate in order to survive. But our primary function is survival, and we assume that everything we did prior to being on, the show today was safe. It didn't kill us. So I'm going to keep on doing it. And that's why these types of things, that's why innovation is difficult, is because the past is safe and the future, if it's unclear, well, that just feels risky. So that's why it becomes so important to really just take that time to question these things.
That is such a powerful thing to end on for this episode, because it is so true. I mean, my mind is just spinning with examples of we do try to go back to how we've done it before. And yet in 2021, for the meetings industry and so many other industries, I don't know if that's the smart move. I think it's time that we have to look for new solutions and new ways to innovate and things like that. So wow, that was a powerful little tidbit, Stephen.
It was indeed. Wow. So, Stephen, if somebody was listening to this and they're like, I need Stephen Shapiro, where would they find you?
StephenShapiro.com. That's Stephen with a PH,
Very important.
StephenShapiro.com. So I'd say that's probably the easiest place, or you can check out the Invisible Solutions book, which is at, surprisingly, invisiblesolutionsbook.com. Those are probably the two places to go. And then, if you have any questions about anything, I'm certainly happy to help any way I can.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much for joining us and being part of our kickoff episode for season 4, all about innovation.
Woo! Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. We were right. Perfect person to kick off our 4th season. We will be back next Monday with another guest to talk about innovation. So you're going to find us at webinartalkshow.live every Monday at 11 a.m. Central Time. And Tom, what are they going to find over there?
So, or you can go to webinartalkshow.com, and that's where you're going to find out everything about Eliz and I, or Eliz or I, if you're looking for somebody to help you host an event and who can incorporate really good, strong interviews, because we believe that a good interview beats a talking head over PowerPoint.
Every time. Every time. So, Stephen, thank you so much again for joining us. We will be back on Monday. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Have a good week.